tuning in to the Imperfectly Inspirational Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bowman. As we say every week, thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. If you like what you hear, please give us a like and follow it, and even share it to your social media. It helps us grow. It helps people find us. Also, don't forget about our Facebook page. It is facebook.com/imperfectlyinspirational. Go check it out if you can. Like and follow that page, and you'll find some inspirational content throughout the week. So let's go ahead and get into the content this week. We are going to get into Daniel chapter 3, and I want to talk about a subject that I feel very confident in saying that everybody has went through, or maybe they're still going through today, and it is a very difficult thing sometimes to get out of, and that is the topic of loneliness. Loneliness affects so many people in our society now, especially through each technological advancement we get. Our society wants to shift to this individualism. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody else. Me. I got this, or I'm so focused on what I want to do, nobody else matters. That's not what we're created to be as humans. God created us to be in a community-driven, working together, loving on one another, being there to help when that is needed in any sort of matter. And this individualistic style, while there's nothing wrong with handling things on your own, it has created this sense of, or I'll say lack of, empathy and love toward each other. I can remember, and I'm sure in some areas it happens now, but not so much where I'm at least. I remember being a kid, me and some other friends, we were always out and about on the town, just riding our bikes and we would stop at a lot of the elderly people's houses through there and just say, hey, how you doing? We'd sit down on the front porch, they'd bring us something to drink, and we would visit 15, 20, maybe even a half an hour, and they absolutely loved it. It was that sense of community. We checked in, we gave these people who didn't have an opportunity to feel loved, to feel that love and that community expression there. So, that lack of things anymore, that lack of checking in on each other, it has really driven people to this sense of being alone. And that's what I really want to tackle today. And we're going to be in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read a verse or so out of it, but I'm just going to tell the story and then we'll dive into a few verses. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, that was actually not their original names. Their original name was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And they were with Daniel when he gave a wonderful prophecy over a dream or a dream interpretation to King Nebuchadnezzar. And they were put into a good place within Babylon to be able to help take care of things. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar decided that, hey, you know what? I want to build this statue and let people worship it. He called everybody together and said, we're going to play all these different noises. When you hear this, we want you to bow down. Well, these three gentlemen decided not to. Well, the king was furious. So he said, hey, listen, bring these guys up here. Okay, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you got an option. Bow down before me, or we're going to throw you into the fiery furnace. And they said, no, we're going to continue to worship our God. Well, needless to say, anytime that you turn down a king, he's going to be angry. Well, he said, you know what? Okay, send him over the furnace. And he had this furnace turned up over 7 times its normal heat. And with the urgency and everything to do this, they overheated this thing so much that even the men, they bound them up and they went to go throw them in, that even the men that threw them in got burnt up because they got too close to the fire. But this is where the story gets phenomenal, and this is where we're going to jump in, is Daniel 3, verse 23. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselor, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. He answered and said, but I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair on their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come up on them. See, you're going to sit there and think, Chris, wait a minute, what does this story have to do with loneliness? There's 3 men there, they're gathered around a lot of people, they're doing stuff. What does this have to do with loneliness? Well, we're going to break it down to you here in just a minute. See, the enemy is out to get us as Christians. The enemy is very sneaky, and there are many different ways that the enemy can get in and create harm in our lives to try to turn us from God, to get us to disobey God and go in a direction that ultimately could be our demise. In the case of loneliness, I really feel that the enemy works in ways that we see within this story. The first thing is, once you start getting these thoughts in your head, the enemy is going to want to change your identity. Just as I mentioned at the beginning of this with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they originally had different God-given names, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. See, we are to God, we have an identity to God, right? We are loved. If we have accepted God, we are loved, we are forgiven, we are accepted, and we are heirs to his throne. Listen, that is a wonderful identity to have, but the enemy wants us to change our identity. He wants to say, you are worthless, you are nothing. Who wants to spend time with you? You cannot do it. These are the things that the enemy is going to start off with. Put in your head, he is going to change your identity so you forget who you are. Well, then what's going to happen next? He's going to really disassociate you with everything around you. He was going to make sure you are isolated, that you feel alone. And these 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they were in the middle of all these people that the king had called forward, they were the only ones that stood up. Now, we know that God is with us, but when you look in the physical realm and everybody else is bowing down to the king, but just these 3 men, could you imagine how alone they felt? They felt singled out. They felt isolated. Wow, we're the only ones not doing this. See, Satan's going to say, why are you doing this? Why are you the only one standing up here and going to church regularly? Why are you loving your kids? Why are you spending time with your spouse? Why are you doing these things? It's not worth it, right? This is the stuff that the enemy is going to do to cause you to want to regress and go back into your own self and not be a part of anything. Well, the last thing the enemy is going to do is when he sees that he can't fully defeat you at that moment, then he's going to throw it down at you. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they felt alone, and then the king called them forward and they said, listen, give in, do what I ask, or you're going to go into the pit. Threatens them with death. And these guys say, no, we are going to worship God. They stand their ground. So needless to say, he goes to throw them into the pit. Satan, the enemy, wants you to be done. He wants to get rid of you. He cannot handle you being fulfilled with Christ. So he is going to do everything in his power and even threaten you with death, threaten to take everything away from you that you know and love. But I have good news for you, my friend. As they looked down into that fiery furnace, they saw not 3, but 4 men walking around. See, what's going to happen is when the enemy comes after you and the enemy tries to change your identity and tell you you're not enough, God is going to come down and he's going to say, hey, listen here, you back off. This is my child. This is who they are. They are loved. They are accepted, and they are forgiven. They are an heir to my glory. That is what God is going to do. He's going to come down and not only just remind you who he is, and who you are in him, but he is going to remind the enemy who you are in him. And then God is going to come in and he is going to say, look, I am with you in this situation. You are not alone. Let's get you out. And he is going to show the world, he is going to show the enemy that there is more to you than what they say there is. There is more to you than that nothingness that the enemy tried to say that you were worth. There's more to you than that. Why is it worth it? You are capable and you are able, and God is going to show you that you are. And listen, at the end of it, God is going to show the enemy who is most powerful, and that while he may be able to come after you, he may be able to try to convince you, God has the final say in what happens in your life. So if you're feeling alone today, I encourage you to get down on your knees, meditate, and pray, and say, God, help me remember who I am in you. God, help me realize that you can get me through this with not even a hair on my head singed, and I won't even smell like smoke going through this fire, God. And that, God, help me find that community. God will guide you through those things. He will guide you to the right situation you need to be in. And honestly, if you are going to a church or anywhere that you are not feeling welcome and loved, pray that God can lead you somewhere, because a place of God's people should be a place of community. As I said before at the beginning of this, God created us to be in a community setting, and if you're not feeling that wherever you're at, pray that God can lead you to a new place. Maybe you're in a community setting that it is just not a loving one. Well, there's plenty of parks and community things to get involved in. Put yourself out there first, though. See what God will do, pray about it, and remember, you are more than you think you are. You're not alone in this world. If you ever need anything, shoot me a message. I'll try to give you as much guidance as I possibly can. But God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, you got this.